a need for a new world order. Someday, in the next few years, a solution will emerge.
Don't assume it was left by accident. If you see something, say something.
The New World Order really is a tool for addressing a new world of possibility. The world can therefore seize this opportunity to fulfill the long-held promise of a new world order. We can find meaning and reward. Only when this transformation is complete will we be able to take full measure of the opportunities presented by this new and involving world order. It is a big idea, a new world order.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This morning, I wouldn't say you're in for a treat, because you're probably going to walk out of here not being the same people that you were beforehand, because you're going to hear some things that are going to scare the dickens out of you. But you need to understand what they are, where it's coming from, and that we can battle against it. Shurtleff from John Birch Society is going to be doing the presentation. I've attended a couple of them. I pick up information absolutely every time. And the scary part of it is next week there's going to be new information, new attacks on our freedoms and our liberties all across the United States, all across the state of Connecticut. I'm going to give Hal all the time in the world. Shurtleff from John Birch.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate coming out, all of you coming out on a Saturday morning in a cold winter day. And I appreciate We Are Change and Oath Keepers for sponsoring me. And this is my, I think, 42nd or 43rd presentation since early June of last year. So I think I'm getting a little bit better at it. But I also learned, not when I'm speaking, but when people in the audience have taught me a lot, because all the areas, farmland, cranberry country, inner city, I learn things from folks all the time. In fact, I just got some information here about the city of Bridgeport, sustainable development. They had a meeting there. So you're up to your eyeballs here in this state. So before I begin, I just want to say that this issue has a resonant chord throughout the country. It's not a new issue. It goes back to 1992. Back in the early mid-90s when we were trying to tell people this, they were saying, oh, you guys are crazy. Well, say, yeah, we are crazy, but we're not stupid. Please pay attention. But now that people can see the results, people are paying attention like never before. And I'm going to give you some success stories and how you can have success stories here, or I should say more success stories. Now, I spoke in New Jersey about five or six times, and one of the venues was a comedy club. And one of our good members said, Hal, you have to tell a joke. And I said, well, I'll tell a joke that's germane to the topic. So, by the way, I heard this from the late Helen Chenoweth. She was from Idaho. She served two or three terms in Congress. She was a real advocate of property rights. She ended up dying in a tragic car accident. Anyway, there was a man who lived in the backwoods, had a little cabin, not Ted Kaczynski, not that type, and he had very little to do with the outside world, but every so often he would go to town to trade furs or whatever he could to get provisions. One particular cold winter, he sprained his ankle pretty badly, and he wasn't able to get out to town. So what he would do is he would throw some bait out in the front of his cabin, and whatever showed up, he would blam away and drag it on in and eat it, cook it and eat it. One particular day, he throws the bait out, and his ankle is a little bit better, so he's getting around a little bit better. Anyway, he throws the bait out, and a spotted owl shows up, and he blams away, drags the owl in. Unbeknownst to him, there were some people from the Nature Conservancy. And by the way, this actually happens. People from these so-called environmental groups will come on your private property. They will trespass and turn you in. Okay? Anyway, they saw that this guy shot a spotted owl, so within a matter of no time, they went back to alert the federal government. And within about 2 hours, there's 2 black helicopters circling the cabin, and these guys in ninja outfits are rappelling down, surrounding the cabin with automatic weapons. And this guy was a peaceful man. He wasn't one going to fire back. So he just surrendered. They put him in handcuffs. They put him in manacles and chains on his feet, threw him in this wagon, and to the federal judge he went. Well, on the way, the man didn't have much money, didn't know a whole lot of people, kept to himself, so he thought, I'm just going to plead guilty, throw myself at the mercy of the judge. So he gets in front of the judge, this intimidating guy in a black robe, You've been here because you've been accused of violating the Endangered Species Act. How do you plead? And the man said, Your Honor, I'm guilty. He said there were extenuating circumstances, I had a sprained ankle and so forth, but I'm guilty. Well, the judge no one has ever pled guilty in his court before. So he liked this. He thought, sir, you're the first one who's ever pled guilty in my courtroom on the 30 years I've been on the bench. I'm going to be lenient with you. I'm going to give you a 10-year suspended sentence and a $100,000 fine. But you better never see your face in my court again. You're going to jail for a long time. And the man is genuflecting. Oh, thank you, Your Honor. Oh, Your Holiness. Oh, Your Majesty. He turns around. He's about to make it out the door. And the judge says, one more question. He says, yes, Your Honor. I'm just curious. What does a spotted owl taste like? He says, well, to be truthful, Your Honor, it's a cross between a bald eagle and a condor. Anyway, before I get into the Agenda 21 bulk of the presentation, I think it's very important to point out that we in the John Birch Society, I would say we are change and oath keepers. I think we want to have clean air and clean water, and we want to see land preserved. We want to see something for our children and the next generations. That's called stewardship. Okay? It's a question of how do you do it. And the best way to go about doing it is through private property, the free market system. We haven't seen the free market system, by the way, in this country for many, many years. And I'm going to demonstrate how countries that have no private property are environmental basket cases. Now, you see in the first slide, sustainability. And we hear a lot about sustainability. And this is the thrust of Agenda 21 is to transform traditional individual property rights into collective property rights. Agenda 21 is based upon the premise that government planning should replace the Western understanding of private stewardship. Now, in addition to the concept of collectivism or communitarianism, is a lot of bad science. Bad science can make bad policy. Here's an example of bad science. Several years ago, Congress banned that wicket light bulb on the left that you see on the left. Thomas Edison invented this baby, right? All of us have used these, all of us have broken these, I'm sure, and our children and our grandchildren have broken these over the years. But it served us pretty well. Well, Congress, in its infinite stupidity, said that this is evil. Now, they didn't get a UN mandate. It wasn't something that a UN said, you must do this, but they're going by the guidelines of Agenda 21. And they banned it. In the year 2014, you'll no longer be able to manufacture or buy one of these. And just recently, Congress tried to repeal the ban. And the Republican majority, right, don't we have? They're all conservatives, right? They all do the right thing. A lot of them said no. And the ban is still there. Okay? Now, what will replace this? The light bulb to your right. The EPA mandate. The word mandate and freedom are incompatible. That's something you have to remember here. Okay? Now, it's mercury-filled, neurotoxins. I know there's mercury, a lot of other things, too, in our home. That's true. But it's not mandated, and you don't usually have mercury bulbs in your children's rooms. But now you will. And now, how many people have broken an incandescent light bulb? Yeah, all of us have, right? No, it's something we don't want to do. It's an inconvenient thing, but we don't have to call a hazmat team, do we? Well, guess what, folks? If you break one of these new bulbs, you're supposed to call a hazmat team. There's an 800 number, by the way, either right on the light bulb or on the package. Have you ever had a hazmat team come out to your house and do some work? They're white, they have the white outfits, you know. You think you're going to get a pretty steep bill for simply breaking a light bulb. Or most people will say, you know what, I'm not going to do it and deal with the, the toxins, okay? And also, most of these bulbs are made in the People's Republic of China. Isn't that interesting? And people also tell me, who know a lot more about the concept, is that when you turn off the incandescent light bulb, you preserve it, right? You turn it on and off. But when you do to the other light bulb, you degrade it, so people leave it on. So you're not really saving any energy there. So that's just one of many bad examples of how government mandates and bad science. Now, we hear a lot about green technology, green jobs. It's going to be the wave of the future, right? It's going to restore our economy. You're going to see all kinds of factories reopen up in Waterbury, right? All the empty buildings with broken glass. All of a sudden, green economy. Well, let's look at some of these inventions. The electric car. I saw a commercial for one, Nissan, right? I don't know what they cost, and I'm not against electric cars. If it's market-driven, that's great, but it's not new technology. Al Gore did not invent the electric car. Here's a picture of one from 1904. It just wasn't very functional. It wasn't practical. If you can make them through the free market system, good for you. Let's do it. I was in Hershey Park with a couple of my children back in November, and they had these places where you can recharge your car battery, right? Your electric car. You know how many cars were parked getting recharged? Zero. Right? One of the presentations I gave in central Massachusetts, a lady that was in the Open Space Committee, she said, our little town of Orange is talking about building these little outlets where people can recharge their cars. She said, not one person in Orange has an electric car. She said, but we're spending money to have these outlets. But you tell what, do we have to have federal government to have gas stations? Right? The gas stations are operating. They don't need any mandates or any subsidies. Or what other wonderful inventions are supposed to take the place of what we have, right? Oh, the windmill. Wind energy is going to be able to produce enough electricity for a dynamic economy by the year 2050. Germany, by the way, very much into Agenda 21. I saw a documentary just about a week ago, and they got windmills everywhere. In the water, everywhere. Just everywhere. And they say by the year 2050, we're going to be able to produce enough energy. Well, I don't think it's happening. The largest wind plant in the United States is in Roscoe, Texas. 100,000 acres.
Wow.
Now, get an idea how many square miles that is. New York City, all 5 boroughs, is 365 square miles. It's about a third of New York City. How much electricity will that wind plant? Enough to generate, to power Queens. You imagine taking Staten Island and Manhattan and just enough electricity for Queens, right? And by the way, there's lots of other problems with windmills. And by the way, if you have a windmill on your property, God bless you, get off the grid as quickly as you can. That's fine. I have no problems with that. But it's when it's subsidized by the government. And I was out in Indiana, and they're all over the place between the ethanol cornfields and the windmills. I mean, it's sad to see that, right? So again, not a new invention, and it's a technology of the past, folks. That's the bottom line. Now, I tell people that my mother was a greenie. I didn't even know that. My dear late mother was a big-time greenie. Why was she a greenie? Because she invented the solar dryer. Yes, it's called a clothesline. Now, why do we have clotheslines? Not because my mother wasn't necessarily a greenie. She respected the environment, I knew. Because we were poor growing up in Hyde Park, Boston. We didn't know we were poor. We had food. We had to stretch out to maybe a stew for the whole week. We couldn't afford a dryer. It was market-driven. And I guarantee you, I've been into numerous towns and cities that have bought into Agenda 21. A town of Wellesley, by the way, Massachusetts, a bedroom community. I don't see any clotheslines in Wellesley. I guarantee it. Lots of 2 or 3 car garages in 10,000 square foot homes, okay? Now, I tell people, I actually have one of these in my home, and I'm saving a rainforest a week by using a ringer, right? More old technology, and get off the grid, fine. You want to use that, that's great, and it does a good job too, right? But it's not going to save the planet. It's not going to address the problems. Now, former governor of California, what's his name? The muscle, Schwarzenegger, yes. And our present president thought that this technology, this Solyndra, was a wave of the future, heavily subsidized by you guys, by us, the taxpayer. What happened to Solyndra recently? They went bankrupt, right? Even with all the federal money and state money they were getting, they still couldn't make it work. In Massachusetts, there was a company called Evergreen. They made windmill blades. $65 million of the taxpayers' money from Massachusetts went to subsidize this company, right? For 5 years, it had 500 people they employed, roughly. That would be, workers, assembly-type workers and administrative people. Well, last year, the CEO said, we can't make a profit. We're moving to communist China. He didn't say communist China, of course, but he said, we're moving to China. Thank you very much, taxpayer. You gave us the ability to perfect our technique, lower our cost, and now we're moving overseas, right? But don't worry about it. And by the way, the town that they're in is not really a town. It used to be Fort Devens. It belongs to Ickley, I-C-L-E-I. And I'll get into Ickley a little bit later. Okay? By the way, recycling. My son and I visited the Trash Museum in Hartford, which is a very interesting place to visit. And the woman that I spoke to, she said that at one point it wasn't feasible to take recycled trash, a lot of the recyclables, because a lot of energy is used. I mean, let's say you have a bottle, a plastic bottle. You're supposed to wash it out. Well, you're using water, sometimes hot water. Then you have to have a truck to pick it up that burns fossil fuel. Then you have to have a plant that usually burns fossil fuel to make it work, right? So none of this stuff is really efficient, but when it can be efficient, and they are now, it should be market-driven. Can you imagine if someone said to me, look, Hal, you put your recyclables out every Monday, and we will pay you, or pay you folks. Do you think I have to worry about going green and saving it? I'm going to use the market force and say, yeah, or maybe the city will pick it up and will abate your property tax. Or we'll do something, an economic incentive. That's the way you get people to respond properly, not through subsidies and bad science. Now, I say that there are two competing documents in the world today. The one on the one on your left, the U.S. Constitution, and on the other side is the Charter of the United Nations and all of its documents since then. For example, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Did you know in that document you have the right to a vacation? You have all kinds of freedom of worship, freedom of travel, freedom of this, freedom of that. However, they qualify that freedom out of existence in the next paragraph. I mean, George Orwell would blush if he attended that con. He may have been there. Maybe that was his motivation for his 1984, although I think he wrote it a little bit before that. So the UN Charter grants you a right. It never tells you where that right comes from, and then it qualifies that right out of existence. In other words, the rights come from government or come from man. The U.S. Constitution, have we all read the U.S. Constitution? Right. How many people have read the UN Charter? Well, you should, because this is the document that's supposed to be ruling our world if we're not successful, and I think we will be successful, by the way. The U.S. Constitution is supposed to protect those rights that are God-given or natural. You can be an atheist, but you still have God-given rights, like it or not, okay? The U.S., for example, you have no Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. You notice that? You have a right protected by the Second Amendment. A profound difference. And I've been guilty of that too. I have a Second Amendment right. Do you think those patriots in Lexington, when the British are showing up, oh, you know what, I really don't have a right to own this because there's no amendment that says I can't. You have and by the way, check your state constitution. By the way, have you ever seen have you been to the museum there, the Capitol Museum? Yeah. That state constitution, that's America's Magna Carta. And it's really not well known. I think it's incredible. That's why you call yourself the Constitution State, the Charter Oak and all that. You should be familiar with your own state history. It's fascinating history. Now, here's another document that came out in 1848. Interesting that people say, oh, the U.S. Constitution was written in an agrarian society with 2 million people. It has no validity for today. Well, the Manifesto was written in 1848. Our society wasn't all that different, right? So, but why is that valid? Now, how many people have read the Communist Manifesto? A few more. It's good because you should be familiar with this. When people say, communism is dead, it is? Read the manifesto. And by the way, Karl Marx, for the first 20 years, it was called the Socialist Manifesto. They didn't put the word communist in it until years later. The very first plank of the Communist Manifesto, the abolition of property. That means private property. And that is the essence of Agenda 21. No matter what any of these Agenda 21 advocates tell you, this is the essence. Agenda 21 isn't just about private property. And by the way, let's look at this 10 planks. Plank number 2, a heavy progressive income tax. Do we have that in our country? Yeah. How about abolition of all rights of inheritance? We can inherit, but you have a very steep inheritance tax to you, so partially installed. Karl Marx, by the way, did not like homeschooling, and he wanted to have free education for all. That was the last plank. But what did he mean by free education? It meant state-controlled education. That's what it meant. And nothing is free. Somebody has to pay for it, right? And Marx also thought the institution of marriage was corrupt, right? Something that served Western civilization pretty well for a couple of thousand years. And what else was Marx? Yes, he said that communism abolishes all eternal truths. Okay, so when someone says, well, it's good in theory, say you haven't read the manifesto. Okay? Now here we go with private property, free market versus socialism. This is a book called Troubled Lands that's probably available on Amazon. It goes into the environmental devastation of the old Soviet Union. And it probably hasn't changed much in the new Soviet Union, right? Or whatever they're calling it this week. Why is that, folks? Why was there environmental devastation? Mikhail Gorbachev wants to be head of the Green Cross. He's a big greenie, isn't he? But he wasn't so green when he was the dictator of the Soviet Union, right? Because there is no private property. That's the bottom line, okay? And by the way, the Agenda 21 people believe that all social injustice begins with private property. So that's why we have to get rid of it, okay? But we believe that all positive things come out of private property. Well, even if it's rented property, because that's where you invent things, that's where you make things. And that's where you hire people to work, you see. And those people become upwardly mobile economically, what have you. Communist China today is an environmental basket case. They don't have EPA agents and OSHA agents running around harassing people. I remember it was a few years ago, a fellow was dumping motor oil into the sewer in front of his house. He had a pool in his backyard. And I said to him, why don't you dump it in your pool? He said, are you crazy? I said, well, you dump it into my pool. You know, I swim in the ocean. You see, but he's not going to destroy his pool because it's private property, right? And you know, interesting too, I noticed this. I make a lot of observations in my 52 years. People that own property usually have more respect for other property, public and private. I'll give you an example. You get a rally of, patriot-type rally, public rally, and the aftermath of that is pretty clean. But I've seen some of these Earth Day concerts, and it's pretty filthy after an Earth Day concert, a free Earth Day concert, right? Okay. United Nations, this is a picture of the headquarters. We call it the house that Hiss built. And by the way, have you ever visited the UN? Anybody have been on a tour of the UN? You walk into where all the tourists go, and there's a gun, a handgun, a big statue. It's got a knot in it, and on the base it says, they will beat their swords into plowshares. Right? Now that comes from the Old Testament. The second sentence that they omit is that, and he will be the ruler of all nations. He doesn't mean the head of the UN. It means the Lord God, you see. But they take that quote out. Well, one of our writers, Will Gregg, wrote a book about the UN, and in the book there was one of these so-called experts on the right was addressing a group, and he made reference to his book. So my former colleague, called him. Professor Nutter was his name, aptly titled, and he said, he said, I understand you're mentioning me in my book. He said, yes. He said, do you really think the UN is trying to take our free guns away? He said, Professor, have you been to the UN? He said, yeah, sure I have. Have you noticed a statue of a handgun? It's a civilian handgun too. Sure. He said, tied into a knot. He said, yeah, I've seen that. Well, where I come from, that's called a clue. Okay. And by the way, I do want to make reference to some resources here, because you're going to forget most of what I say, and I'm going to forget most of what I say. But we have two tables of material. My son on the left is manning that. A little booklet called Agenda 21 and You. I think they're $1 a piece. You can get 15 for $10. This is something you could read for yourself, give it to other people. It's available in PDF format too, by the way. So inside the United Nations is a quick little thumbnail about the UN. I think it's only a couple of dollars, written by Stephen Bonta. Very important book. Out of print book, but a good background on the UN is The Fearful Master. Now you might recognize the author's name, Edward Griffin, author of The Creature from Jekyll Island. This was his very first book. And you can get them on Amazon, $5 or $6 a copy, hardback, paperback, and excellent book. Saviors of the Earth by Dr. Michael Kaufman. This book came out in the mid-90s. Dr. Kaufman is the one that found the map that I'm going to show you. And he goes into the history of the environmental movement back in the 1840s and 50s. The different schools of thought, the soft ecology, those that believed that we were all part of nature, the deep ecology that thought that we were humanity was a scourge of the earth. Guys like David Foreman believe that, by the way. And it's an excellent book. I saw one on Amazon for a penny plus postage, so it's well worth it. So I recommend that. And we have a few of these left. The United Nations Exposed by William Jasper, who's a colleague of ours. William Jasper was a big UN supporter until he read Ed Griffin's book. He's become the biggest, probably the most well-informed opponent of the UN. He's been to the UN conferences all around the world, including the Rio conference. There's a reprint that is an important. We have plenty of these in the back table. I think they're what are these, 50 cents a piece?
25 cents.
Ah, so you get 25 cents. This was written by William Jasper back in last February. And on our other table, we have not a whole lot of DVDs left. I've been doing these presentations. I'm running low. This is my fourth one this week. I was in the Finger Lakes region and Albany, New York, dealing with Agenda 21. This is Tom DeWeese, and I have another one from Michael Shaw. And directly unrelated to the Agenda 21, but is some information about a wonderful family camp called Camp Constitution. We have a little brochure here, and we have some various things that we published. The Family Heritage Series, a list of little articles about our nation's founding. These are only $1 a piece. And one of the more important DVDs we've done in a long time, Overview of America. Do you have a copy of that you show? Overview of America. It's a half-hour long civics lesson that should be a basic thing in everybody's home. And we just came out with a study guide for 50 cents, and this is all on PDF too, by the way. And all these videos are also available on YouTube. I've loaded mine up on my channel. I can load up the whole thing, so I've got hour-long programs, hour-and-a-half-long programs. The study guide, we showed this to a homeschool group, and it was great to see all these young people completely enamored by the video because they're working on the. It's challenging for a lot of adults too. So these are available, and a book I'm going to be talking about a little bit later, Agenda 21. This is a book by the other side, and some of the quotes there too. Interesting that I gave this presentation down in was it Southport, Kip? Southport? And there was somebody from the Southern Poverty Law Center on it in attendance, or wrote a story about it on their website. And I'm quoting verbatim from them, this side, almost looking like, what, can you believe they believe that? See what he says, isn't that silly? Well, yeah, it is, it's dangerous. All right, now that the 3-minute commercial's over. Al Jahiz, anybody familiar with this guy? Al Jahiz was the man who wrote the UN Charter, or most of it. He was a Columbia graduate, a man of privilege. He served as a clerk for Justice, not Brandeis, Justice Holmes, yeah, the elder, thank you. And he was also a Soviet agent, right? And he went to jail. That's why you see in the middle, picture in the middle. He went to jail for perjury because statute of limitations had run out on treason. And I asked the question, what possible good can come from the pen or from the mind of a man like this? I will hope other will say, well, not much, no good. And he gave us the UN Charter. Okay. By the way, he was at Yalta. Roosevelt, Stalin, and Churchill. And he was an advisor to Roosevelt. I can imagine what he said. Hey, Frankie, give Uncle Joe everything. And they did, including 6 million people that went to their deaths. 6 million people that were forcibly repatriated. One of the most darkest chapters in our history. Most people have no idea that even happened. And they say, oh, you guys think Eisenhower was a communist. No, we didn't say that. But he was a rotten guy because he's the one that made sure this happened. Okay? Now, you might say, but hell, I learned in the UN, I learned in school that the UN was a great organization, and if it wasn't for the UN, there'd be another world war. Well, let's examine that very quickly. Here's a picture of, you can't say, I don't know, the contrast isn't all that great. This is 2 Canadian soldiers on a UN mission in Somalia. Okay, they happen to be Caucasians, if you noticed. The man they're torturing over a fire, I would call that torture. I don't know about you, but I would call that torture. I mean, listening to a Jane Fonda speech, that would be torture to me. But this is torture. This is pretty brutal stuff. Now, I served time in the military. Probably served. I was in the 101st Airborne and Army Reserves for a while. In basic training, I'm sure most of you, or if not, some of your loved ones or relatives also served. We were taught in basic training that we never obey an unlawful order. And then, of course, what's an unlawful order? And they explained it. They say that we're not supposed to torture prisoners of war. but we're not supposed to torture civilians. And if we're ordered to do that, we are to refuse. These guys didn't get the memo. Or maybe because they're wearing a blue helmet, they don't have the same guidelines. And you know what? We are supposed to be Americans. We're supposed to be a little different than the rest of the world. Just because they do it in other countries doesn't justify it for us. Okay? By the way, this man died. And you know who broke this story? The Village Voice. Not exactly a conservative paper. But our magazine covered the story when very few did. Now, did you happen to see this in your newspaper, on their TV, or a radio story? But we all heard about Rodney King, didn't we? Right? And we should have. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have heard about Rodney King, but why do we hear about Rodney King and not hear about this? Right? Now, this is something that was documented in Ed Griffin's book that I showed a few minutes ago. This was what happened in Katanga. Katanga was a province of what is now Zaire. It was called the Belgian Congo. You had a black leader who was pro-Western. In fact, our friend Samuel Blumenfeld interviewed him personally and spoke in French. Moses Chombe, and in Katanga there were whites and blacks and Jews and Gentiles all living in peace. Lots of opportunities for people. But when he seceded from what became a communist country, the UN went in with a vengeance, violating its own charter, and they killed innocent civilians, women, children. They bombed radio stations and hospitals. See, all the hospitals have the Red Cross on the top. That was a sign to bomb that, okay? And what was the response? 46 doctors, civilian doctors that were there in the capital of that country, appealed to all of the leaders, including the Vatican, in the name of God, stop this. And what was the response? More planes, more soldiers, more devastation. Okay, this is just some pictures of what they did here in this country. And you remember what happened in UNICEF, the United Nations Child Fund, Education Fund. They had a pedophile ring, a child porn ring at their headquarters. Did you hear about that back in the 80s? How come you didn't hear about that? Interesting. What about in Rwanda? That was more recent. This is a good example of the UN and its wonderful peacekeeping missions. There was a Canadian general in charge of the mission, the military mission. He got wind of the planned genocide, the Hutus killing the Tutsis. He went to the head of the civilian mission for permission. And this man said, no, stand down. Some of these poor people were begging the UN soldiers to shoot them. They'd rather be shot than be macheted, right? You know who that man was? His name was Kofi Annan. He later became head of the UN. He got a Nobel Peace Prize instead of being put in prison. And he and his son made lots of money on that food for oil scandal in Iran back 10 years ago. So here's another example of a UN soldier bringing democracy to the world. Now, most of us who've been in the military have a little bit of training, self-defense. If someone points a gun that close to me, I'm taking that away. Now, please, let's not demonstrate it here, okay? I don't move as fast as I used to, but so I have to imagine there's probably people all around him, automatic weapons pointing at him, right? I mean, the guy has a hopeless situation, and this is just one of many, many, many examples. Okay, all right, Hal. So we accept the fact that some of the times the UN oversteps its bounds, but they've done so much good. And we'd still have World War III if it weren't for the UN. Well, there's a very important book, Death by Government, by R.J. Rummel, a liberal professor, University of Hawaii. I want to point out that as liberals, moderates, conservatives, all are critics of the UN. This book documents that more people have been killed in peacetime by their governments in the 20th century than all of the wars of the 20th century combined. And I add that most of these nations are in good standing at the UN. China, communist China, who was not a member of the UN until the early 70s, right? So when Mao Zedong then became a member of the UN delegates cheered wildly, right? It tells you about the mindset of a lot of those folks here. Okay, Hal, maybe that's the case, but still, they help a lot of impoverished countries. They feed the children. There's a great book called The Law, 1850, Frederick Bastiat. Get it up on Amazon for a few bucks. And the author said that the government creates the poison and the antidote in the same laboratory. Things don't change a whole lot. Technology changes, but people don't change a whole lot. This book, written by a British journalist, also a liberal, documents how the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, corrupt governments, impoverish people. And you remember the Brazilian rainforest? You remember this is a devastation, and we need to have a UN green team to stop this sort of thing, right? Who paid for it? The UN paid for it. And the environmental scientists, the agronomists in that country said, this isn't good soil for growing the crops you want to grow here. Don't do it. But billions of dollars have its way of changing opinions, doesn't it, right? Especially if you're a corrupt person. Okay, now, Agenda 21. And the reason why I had to go into the UN is because the UN is the grandpappy, or the parent organization of Agenda 21. That's why it's important to get the background. If you know that the foundation is rotten, everything that comes out of that must be rotten too. In 1987, there was a conference, the World Commission on Environment and Development. It was chaired by a lady from Norway who had been the Prime Minister, Gro Harlem Brundtland. And this is where they coined the term sustainable development, which I explained a few minutes ago. Sustainable development, their definition that's for the public consumption is simply this: to meet the needs of the present generation without infringing on the needs of future generations. Now, they say needs, not wants or desires, but needs, right? So basic necessities, right? A couple of years later, 1992, they had a meeting in Rio de Janeiro. We are celebrating the 20th anniversary in a few months, and they're having another meeting. They call it Rio 20. And out of this conference, 18,000 or more people were there. Anybody here in this room went? No, probably not. Mostly bureaucrats. Now, our colleague, Bill Jasper, who was at the conference, he wrote an article about it. This is the magazine, and I have this on PDF if you like. I can make sure you get it. And he said at this conference, he said there were communists, socialists, internationalists, globies, greenies, and diapered swamis. He's got an interesting sense of humor. Two of the diapered swamis, Al Gore and John Kerry. John Kerry has a yacht. How many people have yachts? Right? They're not sustainable, are they, for us? But he has one. He's a man of privilege and wealth. I've got nothing against people who have wealth and have privilege. It's how you use that wealth and privilege. If you're using it to benefit, to promote freedom, then I'm in favor of it. All right? Now, how you made that money? He married into even more wealth and privilege, didn't he? Right? So he's an elite. He's a skull and bonesman. He went to Yale College here in Connecticut, right? He's an elitist. How about Al Gore? Al Gore became a billionaire lying to people about global warming. And global warming is another basis of Agenda 21. Now they call it climate change because people have been exposing it, so they have to change the term. By the way, Al Gore, he was already a millionaire, and he just became a billionaire by going around saving the planet in a jet flying around the country. He will not allow any reporters unless, he screens them. And no one's going to debate him on this subject. I met the head of the former head of the European Union, Václav Klaus, who is a great guy. He's he's from Czechoslovakia. He's president of Czechoslovakia. And he has an open debate with Al Gore, a challenge. Al Gore will not accept that challenge. Al Gore will not be in the same room with him, and I don't blame him. So, out of this conference came a number of things. Biodiversity and Agenda 21. Agenda 21 is a 1,000+ page document that will be binding upon all living things on the planet. And the 21 means the 21st century. Now, this book that I showed you a little while ago, this is a synopsis of the 1,000-page plus document. This is a couple of hundred pages. Folks, this is a book to how to total government. And by the way, Obamacare is in this book. They don't say Obamacare. Obama was not too well known when this book was published. But Obamacare is in this book. This is what the man who edited this book said. Effective execution of Agenda 21 will require a profound reorientation of all human society, unlike anything the world has ever experienced. A major shift in the priorities of both governments and individuals, and an unprecedented redeployment of human and financial resources. This shift will demand that a concern for the environmental consequences of every human action be integrated into individual and collective decision-making at every level. It's no coincidence that everywhere you turn, everything is green. Green this and green that. There's a reason for it. Okay? Now, at this conference, let me go over some of the people at this conference, just to give you an idea of the mindset. The beloved late Jacques Cousteau, beloved by many, undersea ruler Jacques Cousteau, World War II hero, an inventor, an innovator in the submarine technology, to his credit, and that's where I leave it off. He was at this conference and spoke to these Dietrich Swamis and the other folks in the attendance, right? 18,000 or so. The bottom paragraph is what he said. An American-born child, environmentally, is too expensive to maintain to his or her adulthood in a world economy. American women must be subjected to some manner of regulation beyond licensing and mandatory abortion practices. Are you ladies okay with that? You okay with that?
No.
Well, you're going to have to be if this is going to be implemented, right? How about you guys? You okay with that?
No.
Yeah. Now, this man should have been run out of town by saying this. He was wildly applauded. Paragraph above, 6-7 months prior to this is a publication, United Nations Environment, Science, Cultural Organization. See, the UN isn't just interested in a little bit of power. They want to control the science. They want to control the culture. Folks, they want to control your soul. Okay? There's a book that we have. It's called Freedom on the Altar. And the cover is a picture of the UN's meditation room, right? Well, that's nice. You contemplate things and meditate. It's maintained by the Lucius Trust. Lucius Trust used to be called the Lucifer Trust.
It's Rockefellers.
But for some reason, Lucifer has a bad publicity, so they changed it. They're always changing names of things, right? Once they get it exposed. This is what he said in this UNESCO Courier. One American tires the earth much more than 20 Bangladeshis. World population must be stabilized, and to do that, we must eliminate 350,000 people per day. Now, I'm not making this up. You could find this on the internet. Okay, now, I remember when it first came out, I may have even had a copy of it, but it was a very long interview. And by the way, he went on to say, it's a terrible thing to say, but it's terrible not to say it. Let's do a little bit of arithmetic here. Simple multiplication. 350,000 times 5, right? Now we're sort of encroaching upon Hitler, aren't we? 350,000 times 10. Now we're treading around Stalin, right? You get the picture? Yeah. All right, who else was at this conference? Well, a guy named Maurice Strong. Maurice Strong actually was sort of was the head of this United Nations conference on the environment here. Maurice Strong, when he was 18 years of age, was little more than a glorified security guard at the UN. He was the pass clerk. You know, here's my credentials. Within 7 years from that, he's leading an oil company in Canada. I mean, he's a president of a major oil company. That's a big promotion from security guard. How many people got promoted that fast? You know, I mean, some of us might, we might be clerks, and the next thing you know, 5 years later, we might be managers. But from a pass clerk at the UN to a head of an oil company in Canada, pretty well. How did he do that? A guy named David Rockefeller happened to befriend him. And by the way, the Rockefellers are some of the Lawrence Rockefeller, David's older brother, since deceased, was one of the early environmentalists. And everything he did was used to enrich the Rockefeller Foundation. If they gave property away, they made sure that all the resorts were built around these parks, okay? So everything they do was always profit motive, okay? Just like Al Capone had soup kitchens in Chicago during the Depression. Gee, you were hungry, and good old Al fed you. But he was also shooting a lot of people and doing a lot of bad things too, right? Maurice Strong says that the American middle class is the biggest threat to the world. How many people fit that description? Maybe a few in the room? Or maybe some of you said, yeah, if I'm not there, I want to be there, right? And why does he say that? Well, it's because how many people drove here in a car? How about a bicycle? Anybody come here on a bicycle? You're all unsustainable. See, you're proving his point, right? How many people have a single-family home? Oh, my. How about cars? Yeah. How many people buy things in stores, right? Yeah. It's your consumption patterns that are bad, you see. He, by the way, has property all over the world. He has an ashram. His wife, he's a real hardcore New Ager. And I disagree with that. He has a right to be that if he wants to be, or the freedom to do that. But don't expose, it's funny because guys like Bill Maher will do these documentaries about crazy Christians, right? And always ridiculing Christians. They never ridicule guys like this, though, and their beliefs. These ascended masters, and when Hillary conjured up the spirit of Eleanor Roosevelt in the White House, they don't go after that. They go after people who believe in God, that our nation was founded upon. This fellow, Maurice Strong, was interviewed in 1990 in a magazine called West, put out in the British Columbia. I couldn't find it on the internet, by the way. There was a lot of references to it, and I remember hearing about it when it first came out, but this quote can be very much verified. David Wood was the reporter, and he was riding around with Maurice in his limousine, I think, 2 gallons to the mile or something like that, right? And he's talking about a novel he's writing. And he's talking, and by the way, this guy also is head of the World Economic Forum, some of the most wealthiest industrialists, internationalists in the world, right? And he said this: "Isn't the only hope for the planet that the industrialized civilizations collapse? Isn't it our responsibility to bring that about?" He went on to say that, but I shouldn't be talking about these things. This poor guy, David Wood, he couldn't. He was flabbergasted. He said, "This guy can do it." You see. So when you see our economy in the tank, it's planned. When people say, "Oh, the Democrats don't get it, the Republicans don't get it," they get it all right, and they're giving it to us, right? Now, out of Agenda 21, the conference convened, they had this 1,000-plus page document hot off the presses. George Bush, the man on the top left there, the then president, was not at Rio, but he was off on a boat, probably a yacht. I don't think it was Kerry's, though. And this document was presented to him, and he signed it. It was not a law and not a treaty. And he said that we're going to abide by Agenda 21. Folks, every branch of our federal government is pushing Agenda 21, and has for a very, very long time. So there's a Republican conservative, but you remember when George Bush addressed a conference, a joint session of Congress in 92 or 91? What did he say? A new world order, and a UN is envisioned by its founders. Well, I have a junior college degree. I got a 3.9 average, but I mean, I'm not the smartest guy in the world. He went to Yale. He was the head of the CIA, right? He had oil, wasn't he head of an oil company for a while too? Should he know who was the founder of the UN? I'm sure he does. And that's exactly why he wants that way, all right? The guy on the bottom there, Bill Clinton, the moderate Democrat, right? The centrist, right? I love these centrists. Bill Clinton established the the Presidential Office of Sustainability. And the son, George's son, was also a big promoter of that. I don't have a picture of him. Obama last summer created with executive order, he created the rural councils. This is to get people in the rural areas off the land and into these Agenda 21 villages and homes and communities, right? One of Bill Clinton's advisors, by the way, the only non-government advisor to Bill Clinton, he was in the private sector, Kenneth Lay, from Enron. See, there's big money to be made in green. It's a hustle and a scam, folks. Lots of money to be made. And he eventually went to jail for other things, right? J. Gary Lawrence is a big supporter of Agenda 21. He lives up in the Seattle area. He's very much connected to this issue. In 1996, he was addressing a group in England, a group of supporters. This wasn't a group, of people against him. And he said this: "Participating in a UN-advocated planning process would very likely bring out many of the conspiracy-fixated groups and individuals in our society. This segment of our society who fear one-world government and a UN invasion of the United States to which our individual freedom would be stripped away would actively work to defeat any elected official who joined the conspiracy. So let's call our processes something else, such as comprehensive planning, growth management, or smart growth." These are the terms that we've all heard before, right? But what's the opposite of smart growth? Stupid growth? We get the greatest country in the world that was stupid, what we done, right? What we built. Now, I do grant you there's been some bad policies. I'm not going to defend some of those things, but so he's basically said, folks, we have to lie and deceive people if we're going to get this agenda through. That's global ease for saying lying and tricking and deceiving people. And back in the mid-'90s, there was a lot of these militia groups popping up, and they were talking about UN troops, barefooted Mongolians in the woods of northern Maine, or a division of these folks over here. Folks, we don't need barefooted Mongolians with UN helmets on. We don't need a UN occupational troops. How is this happening? It's not happening it's not even happening, there's no force right now. It's because the people in our neighborhoods, our friends, our neighbors, maybe the lady who babysat us, who's now the city councilor, they're the ones that are bringing it in. And why are they bringing it in? Why do they have such a positive attitude, a view of this? Well, 2 generations of bad education, maybe. Although I've met some of these UN people who think that they're doing it for our own good. They think this is very patriotic. This is going to be the best thing for America. We just are too dumb to figure it out, and they have to do this. So I've debated the vice president of the World Federalist, New England World Federalist, on live TV. It was a lot of fun. And I don't think the guy has two horns, and I think he's just deceived, like a lot of people are deceived. And I'm sure he thinks the same of me. You know, oh, well, God, hell, I thought you had two horns with John Birch, but you're a pretty nice guy. But you just have the wrong idea. So, anyway, let's go. Okay, now, if I was to if I was training you to be Agenda 21 supporters, I would show you a picture on the left. After a couple of days of this training, make sure you were getting it. I would say, all right, folks, all right, people, what is wrong with this picture on the left? And you would look at it and say, because the average person would say, well, a lot of trees and my homes, looks pretty nice. Nothing wrong with it. You would say, well, I see single-family homes. Bad, right? I see, a swimming pool. High consumption pattern, a vernal pool maybe. Bad. I see driveways. That means cars. I see a lot of space for backyards. That means you consume things. Maybe you even put chemicals on your grass and make it green, right? Bad stuff. Those are all things that are wrong. That's a typical suburban middle-class neighborhood. It's unsustainable in their eyes. On the right, what you see is the wave of the future. If we're not successful. Now, it's a stack 'em and pack 'em community, right? Small homes, small little units, biological living units, I suppose what I call them. Maybe Section 8 housing, subsidized by all levels of government, right? Now, if it's market-driven, some people don't want to live in a big home. They get older, they don't want to have, cut the grass or worry about the weeds. That's fine. Move in, that's good. But when it's being mandated or when it's being subsidized, I got a problem with it. Now, I was in Nashua, New Hampshire, not too long ago. Nashua belongs to one of the arms of the Agenda 21, ICLEI, and the mayor of the town was asked by a friend of hers, who was a friend of mine, how come you guys got this ICLEI? She said, I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea what you're talking about. And I believe she's probably telling the truth. Well, I went to Nashua Town Hall to look for evidence of Agenda 21. I did see a bulletin board, much like that, right there. It says Green Team. So look for that. When you see Green Team, a Green Team is people that they hire in these towns and cities. Sometimes they might be volunteers to go around to implement Agenda 21. They go around the neighborhoods, they go around the businesses, right? Anyway, that's all I saw. I took a walk on Main Street, and I'm familiar with Nashua, and I saw this thing called Renaissance Downtowns. Take a note of that because they're operating in Bristol, Connecticut. At least, maybe even here in Waterbury. And there was a storefront, and I looked in, and I had my little trusty camera. It's good to have because everybody has a camera with a cell phone practically, right? So we can take pictures of the evidence, right? I saw these blown-up maps of Nashua, and that's an indicator because they do a lot of rezoning. They have this comprehensive planning, and they rezone conservation easements. So that was my curiosity. I went in there, and to the right was a Niesel with a big sign that says, "What is smart growth?" I said, I found it. I found the entity. The young lady came up to me and she said, "Can I help you?" I said, "Yes, can I get some information about your organization?" She gave me this little packet, and I'm going to be talking about benefit corporations in a few minutes. And I said, "Have you ever heard of Agenda 21? She says, "No." I said, "We're having a presentation on it in a few weeks. You want to come?" And she said, "Oh, we'll be interested." They didn't show up. While I was doing the presentation, and I mentioned this, the lady got up and she said, "Yes, these folks testify at the city council all the time, and they say Nashua doesn't need any more single-family homes." They're the ones that are bringing the stack 'em and pack 'em into Nashua. Okay? All right, the ICLEI is one of the operatives entities that is bringing Agenda 21. Now, Connecticut has only about, I think, 7 or 8 towns and cities that formally belong to it. New Haven, Essex, Wilmington, New London, and a few others. They're working every day to get more people on the rolls, by the way, and we're just doing the opposite. Okay? But you don't have to belong to ICLEI, International Council on Local Environmental Initiative, to push their agenda. In fact, Bridgeport, Connecticut, which I don't think is a member as of yet, they're big into sustainable development, and I just got the printout here.
I looked at the listing. Bridgeport is there too.
Is Bridgeport on there? Okay. Okay, so I have an older list that I'm updating all the time, though. So now, the ICLEI, here's the World Secretariat, David Cadman. He's a Canadian. I bet you we all heard of David, right? Did we vote for him? No, we didn't vote for him. Here is, I call him the Burgermeister, the world's Burgermeister. Conrad Otto Zimmermann. Right? We thought we got rid of the Germans in 45. No, they're back, folks. By the way, Italy's headquartered in Germany. Okay, you didn't know that. So if your town or city belongs to Italy, he's your real mayor. You may have elected somebody, but if they've signed on to agree to implement their items, they're the ones calling the shots. Okay, and all of everything they do, right, is based upon the ICLEI. Now, ICLEI, it's not an NGO. An NGO, non-government organization. Now, that's used as a generic term, but it's also a legal term. The UN will certify certain groups, just like a kosher company will say, that's kosher and that isn't. Okay, they certify it. And an NGO, in order to be certified as an NGO, you have to promote the ideals and views enshrined in the UN Charter. Isn't it great? They always say enshrined when it comes to the UN Charter. They never say the ideals enshrined in the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, by the way. Article 1, Section 10. You all said you read the Constitution, so you probably know it verbatim, just like I do, right? No state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation. What's a confederation? Well, the state of Connecticut cannot join the European Union. Why? Because you're part of the United States. If the state of Connecticut cannot join the European Union or the ICLEI, neither can its subdivisions called towns, cities, counties. And of course, you get rid of your county government for the most part, right? Now, there's also Article 4, Section 4. It says that every state is guaranteed a what kind of government? A Republican, Republican kind of government, right? And how can you have Republican government? And that simply means rule by law, by the way. You know, it doesn't mean Republican Party. How can you have a Republican government when you have Italy in your town? You have people that are following guidelines from an international organization that hate the Constitution. Okay? Now, education is also, if you go to the Italy website, it isn't just about getting rid of greenhouse gases. It's about social redistribution of the wealth. Social justice. That's the buzzword. No, we like the idea. We want to be just. I don't want to be socially unjust, but they have different terminology. I said globalese. Sounds really good. Remember Jesse Jackson, he's the social justice. Well, social justice, what's the opposed to that? Social injustice? Well, who wants that? This was one of these little instructional kits you get from these Agenda 21 people, right? Education, Promise, and Paradox. Generally, more highly educated people who have higher incomes consume more resources than poorly educated people who tend to have lower incomes. Boy, that took a long time to come out with that, yeah? In this case, more education increases the threat to sustainability. So what do? Dumb everybody down, right? Make them stupid. Smart growth, but stupid people. Now, this came from the Department of Education. This is a letter came up from the head. I'm assuming he's an Obama appointee. I don't think the Republican would be much better. Today, I promise you that the Department of Education will be a commended partner in the national effort to build a more environmentally literate and responsible society. Yeah, we can't teach children to read anymore, but we're going to make them environmentally literate, you see. We must advance the sustainability movement through education. Education and sustainability are the keys to our economic future and our ecological future. Yes, in every single public school, most private schools, and even Christian schools are pushing this, right? Every one of them, and taxpayers' money to do it, right? And I'm going to show that a little bit. Now, when Ron Paul was a congressman the first time around back in the 70s, he tried to get a law passed to change the name of the Department of Education to the Department of Public Education, DOPE. It didn't go through. And by the way, the DOPE is unconstitutional. There is nothing in the federal Constitution that gives us. It was Jimmy Carter that created it, but how many Republicans have we had since then? And we still haven't, right? Now, this is not a good copy here, but what you see is a new concept called benefit corporations. And there's a website called benefitcorporations.net. Check it out because Connecticut may be on the list. A benefit corporation, now I did a little research on it. The prior definition would be a company that exists to serve the public good. It would be like a state-run transportation company or a county water supply or something like that, all right? Benefit corporation. But there's a new entity. A benefit corporation is one that is sustainable, a sustainable corporation. It could be a Kool-Aid stand or it could be Bechtel, all right? States are now passing laws acknowledging benefit corporations to give them special privileges and statuses. Mussolini was a lot honest. He said, I'm a fascist, and we are a fascist government. This is eco-fascism, folks. And right now, there are a number of states, and I said New York, and then the other night when I was in Albany, somebody said that it didn't actually pass, that there was some kind of glitch in the procedure, so I was glad to hear that. But Vermont passed it, it passed in New Jersey unanimously in both houses, and the conservative governor signed it, right? So you've got Vermont, you've got New Jersey, you've got Virginia, California, and it's pending in a number of other states, Pennsylvania and Michigan, that's being debated right now. On their website, they'll say, how can you get your state to be a benefit corporation? So keep your eyes open. I know the local groups here, keep your eyes open. Go to the website, see what's pending at the State House. Because a benefit corporation will give special status. In other words, if you want to get that contract to build something in the state, you better be a benefit corporation and toe the line. Okay? ICLEI members, we went over that, there's about 600 in the United States. And what's sad about it is the federal government and state governments are encouraging towns to join ICLEI. Okay? As you see, I've been traveling throughout the area. And this was I was in Indiana, you know, the heartland of America and all that good stuff. They're up to their eyeballs in it. I was in downtown Indianapolis back in August, and there was a table like this, nice young lady passing out these little booklets. They were designed for elementary school children. And air schmear, you know, it's all this stuff about how bad, what can you do to help the air. The book didn't have anything bad about it. It's all good advice, but it's a way to condition them. But it came from the Indianapolis Office of Sustainability. Indianapolis is not an ICLEI member. And by the way, some of the Obama bucks are used to hire sustainable officers in towns and cities across the country. And I tell you the truth, when they do an ad, when they hire somebody, they're not hiring people off the street. Oh, good on the phone, good public, good relations experience. They're hiring hardcore activists. They're hiring environmental activists. Providence, Rhode Island just hired a lady. Her pedigree, she was it said activist. Of course they're activists. They're not just hiring people off the street for a 40-hour job. They don't hire constitutional activists, do they? To promote liberties and freedoms, but they hire environmental activists. In other words, she now is an activist with a badge that has authority. You see, your worst kind of nightmare. And you probably have one in your town and don't even know it. That's why I say it's important to look for this. The Nature Conservancy. I'm not going to get in too much into the land trust issue. Land trusts, some of them do good work. Most of them are set up to promote Agenda 21. They'll get people off their land. They will trespass. Their advocates will trespass. They turn their land back over to the governments. Worldwide, a lot of these third world nations that are deeply in debt, they will do land for debt swaps, right? We'll give you so many acres. And as I said earlier, the best way to preserve land is through private property. They locked up these forests, and people wonder why I have these big forest fires, because they're not being managed. Just like your garden. When we moved out of our house in Hyde Park, it was empty for a year and a half. We had a nice yard, but nobody was managing it. It was just a patch of weeds and dead grass and things. It wasn't managed. The same thing with a forest. So these folks are using bad science. They have an endangered animal, and they put a wall around it. But we all know the forest it changes. The trees are this big, and certain animals live in those trees. The trees get bigger, they move, right? But you can't, because now the whole area is closed off because of a spotted owl or a three-toed sloth or what have you, right? And people are forced off their property. New York's up to the eyeballs in the genital. So is it Massachusetts. Massachusetts has this Green Communities Initiative. 85 to 87 towns belong. And back in June, I started looking for evidence. I started visiting town halls across the region, New England and other parts. I was in Pittsfield last week. I was in Albany. By the way, you ever see the All-American Awards? All-American City Awards? Have we seen those? There are a lot of these towns and cities. And when I used to see it, it has a shield, red, white, and blue. And I thought, okay, to be an All-American city, you probably have, maybe good schools, playgrounds, livable, you can walk to the safe, low crime, right? That's what my thought was. Well, I didn't know anything about it until I started seeing these All-Americans. I was in South Bend, Indiana 2 weeks ago, and it was an All-American City 2011. Dedham, Massachusetts, All-American City 2011. Albany, New York, 2009. So I went to their website, and guess what? One of the justifications is the award is that they're promoting Agenda 21, or sustainability. So All-American has been, and the group goes around back to 1912, almost 100 years old. The National Civic League, right? And at one time they were probably very good, but you see what happens, people creep in. Dedham, Massachusetts, one of the oldest towns in the country, oldest wood frame house. Saco and Vizetti were tried there. The oldest canal in the country flows through there. I went to the town hall to look for evidence. Didn't have to look very far. Beside this gigantic check. I mean, it was a meager $179,800. If they join green communities and join ICLEI, this is what we'll do for you folks. So they have people in our state, Massachusetts, that will actually go, full-time officials that go to these towns, bribing elected officials with money. This money, there's about, I say, 85 to 87 towns. $15 million in the last couple of years have gone. And what they'll do is they'll take this check and earmark it for a certain thing. And then when you earmark that, then you have to buy into all of our proposals here. Okay, and I'm going to go into those in a few minutes. City of Newburyport, town of Greenfield, right? Marshfield, Massachusetts, one of the oldest, another old city. My ancestors pioneered that town, and the day I was in that town, I visited the home that my great-grandpappy, 12 generations, was struck by lightning in 1666. It was quite an experience. The house is still standing. And I'm sure there are some environmentalists that wish I was struck by lightning, but I went in there, and be a greenscaper. Everything is all about being green, and there was rain barrels. Yes, get rain barrels. Right? Like Al Gore invented the rain barrel, so we can all become environmentally sensitive because we have rain barrels now. Yeah, I've got nothing against rain barrels. By all means, get them if it will help you, sure. So I went in there with copies of these reprints to give to the selectmen, which we did, and I went into the town manager's office, knocked on the door, and I went in, and before I could even say a word, the fellow said, "I'm not interested in that." Well, Marshall belongs to, he said, "I know what it belongs to, and I'm not interested." So you don't have to be rude. I'm not being rude, I'm sure. I took his card, I went back home, did a little research, and discovered that his background, international. He's the guy that brought ICLEI into Marshfield. There's a resolution. It's all based on global warming, too. And basically, here's the charter of Marshfield that goes back to the 1600s, and we're taking it, and now we replace it with a charter for ICLEI. Now, we have a friend who's a state senator, has a talk show host in Marshfield, and we challenge this guy to come on and debate. He wouldn't come on. We're not interested in debating us. Ridiculing us, but not debating us. Okay? Kingston, which is just a few towns over, I didn't see the big check, but I saw a photocopy of the check. It was this little pamphlet, this little thing it was showing. All kinds of windmills are popping up in Kingston, too, by the way, okay? Green communities. Now, on top of that, you go to Kingston and they ask you to join the Nature Conservancy, a non-government organization, to be green. It doesn't say join Oath Keepers, join We Are Change, right? Join the John Birch site. No, join the Nature Conservancy. Now, why is that? Because there aren't enough patriots going to these town halls. Because, folks, these town halls belong to us too, don't they? Well, let's reassert that ownership. Let's get in front of these people. I know you folks at We Are Change do that a lot, right? That's how we're going to change things. Not just sitting back and say, oh, it's too bad. Or people say, oh, but they're all liberals in my town. Liberals have no more right to turn their town over to ICLEI than conservatives do. And there are plenty of people on both sides that are doing it. Okay? Going green in Wellesley. Wellesley is one of the most wealthiest towns, and it's green. This is an unsustainable community, and they're all buying into it. Okay? We get a neocon talk show host that lives in Wellesley. He won't touch this issue. All right? Here's an evidence. This was on a bus in Boston. Recycling, good karma. Yes, isn't that a Hindu term? Isn't that a violation of the First Amendment, right? Imagine if it said recycling, be a good steward of God's planet, right? No, that would be unacceptable. I was in Columbus, Ohio, and people, oh, Columbus, Midwest, all conservatives here. Yeah, but you have a sustainable Columbus. Did you know that? No, we didn't know that. Just go on the website. I found it, right? Green mail, the post office. As I said earlier, every branch of the federal government is pushing Agenda 21. You may have seen these, right? This is great. You go to the post office, and they give you this little pamphlet here, this little that we pay for, right? It says how to save, be eco-friendly here. It says adjust the thermostat. I need the post office to tell me to adjust my thermostat. I'm paying for the fuel in my house, right? And now you got to tell me to adjust my thermostat. They must really think we're stupid, right? How about use public transportation? And it should say, if you dare, right? I have nothing wrong with it. I use it. I'm very handy to the subway and also to commuter rail. I use it when it's feasible, and that's the way for the future. They want to get you out of your cars and use public for everything, right? How about plant trees? Well, you know what? If I live in a Stackham and Packham community, I don't have any place to plant trees, right? But I plant trees, but we're paying for this stuff, right? And on the left here, here's Horton. Here's a who. Horton is now part of this conspiracy, Mr. Lawrence said. I picked this up at a city hall in Massachusetts, in Malden, Massachusetts, right? This is designed for children. You know, people said, we have a summer camp, Camp Constitution. I had a very favorable article about our camp came out in the Nashua newspaper, Nashua, New Hampshire, last July. The online version had, people wrote comments, and somebody said, they brainwashed children at this camp. And I wrote back, I said, you must have mistaken us for a typical public school. Right? And then someone said I was an idiot. I said, well, I can't be an idiot and brainwash, because that requires some intelligence. So which one is it? And I often meet with these people, too. They don't want to meet with you. Yeah. I'm not going to meet with you. Then shut your mouth. You know? The Gaia movement. Gaia, by the way, is the earth god. Earth goddess, I'm sorry. I want to give this lady's your property do here. These are the folks that, this is the goddess that people like Maurice Strong worship, right? Yeah, and this is a recycle, you donate your clothes. This was in Fort Wayne, Indiana. By the way, Fort Wayne pulled out of ICLEI recently, so that was a good news. Now, I mentioned benefit corporations. Consigli Construction Company, established in 1905. Proud to be one of New England's leading green contractors, right? Now, I don't think the CEO is a friend of Al Gore. He may be, but he's probably saying, I've got to make payroll. I've got to, and this is how I'm going to get the contract, right? And I can somewhat understand that. But back in December, I was able to speak to a builders association in Bradford County, Pennsylvania. One of the guys on hand was a top guy with the Pennsylvania Builders Association. He said, we had 13,000 members in 07. We now have 6,500 members. And I tell these people who think they're going to make their payroll by going green, you better use your resources to fight this stuff, or you won't have a company. And by the way, if I'm a contractor in this economy, or any economy, I'm going to be very resourceful. I've got to maximize my profits. The free market will tell me that I'm not going to waste. I'm not going to waste my resources. I'm going to recycle when it's feasible, right? I don't need Al Gore, unelected bureaucrats from around the world to tell me how to run my construction company. I don't need bureaucrats in Germany to tell me how to raise cranberries if I live in Marshfield, or grow corn if I live in Indiana, okay, or nutmegs if I'm living in Connecticut, right? Now, this is the solar trash compactors, and if you buy into sustainable communities, you get these, right? Wow, this is nice. The sun will compact the trash. Well, you know what? I'm even more green. I use my foot to compact the trash in my house. And of course, we should be using our feet to kick out this stuff, too. Solarized Massachusetts. Everyone's going solar, right? What's the saying? Solar's all right, but nukes do it all night. Drinking tap water. I picked this up in City Hall in Boston, right? 30 years ago, if you were drinking spring water, you were a fitness person, you were probably going out there jogging and eating right and drinking spring water. It's not sustainable anymore, folks. They'll stop doing it. Why? Because it comes in plastic bottles. That's an oil byproduct, right? And then trucks have to come and pick them up. Bad. Now drink tap water. Get your daily dose of fluoride and chlorine, thank you. Now, we live in Boston. Our water isn't that bad compared to other parts of the country. But we still have to filter it because you can taste the chlorine in it, right? That means the stuff in it when the chlorine is, when you can taste it. You see the windmill? Now, I haven't seen if there's any subliminal messages in these ice cubes. I'm told that, they can't. So it probably says, go green, ICLEI, UN. I mentioned about this book, Sustainable Obamacare was in this. And by the way, Obamacare, I don't think Obama wrote any of that. It was all long before him, so he just happened to be referred to as Obamacare.
He reads, he doesn't write.
Yeah. So anyway, sustainable medicine, right? Sustainable agriculture, yes. 100 years ago, you took half the population to live on farms to raise enough food for the rest of us, right? Today, because of technology, because the people 100 years ago did not worry about sustainable development, they used the resources of the day and the technology that they improved, machinery, burning oil, for tractors and things like that, to make things. Now, I know there's some issues with a lot of issues with the food, but I mean, just the bottom line, we don't need to have everybody on the farms. And I'm 2 generations off the farm. My grandfather was a farmer. But sustainable agriculture is not to be independent. I'm all in favor of communities raising their own food and local food markets and all that, farmers markets. By the way, I went to the New Haven Farmers Market and sustainable farming, right? So there's probably a lot of good people there, but some of them buying into this stuff. And they actually had little pamphlets about New Haven is one of these refugee cities, right? Illegal immigrants are welcome there. So you think there's a contrast between, well, sustainable people don't really want population control is a key element of Agenda 21. So why do they want all these people coming into New Haven? Well, I guess because the concept of sovereignty is bad, so there should be any borders. They also probably get these people in some of these third world countries that like to have large families, and now they're getting them into the, I guess, New World Orderizing them, I guess, for want of a better phrase. So they can give them, and by the way, most of the UN's family planning, so-called, is in third world countries, in black Sub-Saharan Africa, where there is no population problem, okay? So they talk about, oh, you folks are racist. You're the racist. You're the elite racists, okay? All right. Agenda 21 in action. Now, in Massachusetts, we have this thing called CLRPA, Proposed Comprehensive Land Use Partnership Act. You might have something like that in Connecticut. You look at the word comprehensive. This would replace the town zoning to have regional zoning planning boards, unelected bureaucrats, or as my colleague Dave Kopat says, Soviets, Soviet councils. Bottom line, that's what these things are. By the way, the American Planning Association (APA) is the second arm of ICLEI, pushing Agenda 21. They weren't always that way. Okay. How about proposed mild tax? Do you have that yet in Connecticut? Our mayor in Boston wants to have a mileage tax. So not only do we pay excise tax, gas tax, and all kinds of other taxes, but we have to, if he has his way, we'll have to tell the city how many miles we're driving. Oh, this guy's driving 50,000 miles. He must be a John Birch coordinator. Aha! Right? So if you have to pay a mileage tax, you're either going to lie about your mileage, or you're going to have to stop driving as much, or give up your car, right? How about a smart meter? Now, there's a lot to learn about smart meters. Smart meters are really a listening device, 2-watt radio station, all right? I got a 1-minute video with Obama, and behind him are some solar panels. He's advocating smart meters. So that should be enough. Why would a president worry about smart meters? There's nothing in the Constitution about smart meters or dumb meters or any meters, right? But he's there advocating smart meters. How about green codes? Green codes, stretch codes, or building codes that have been changed in order to conform to sustainable development. So that means, for example, that if you want to add an addition to your home and your town is bought into this, you can't, or if you do, it's going to cost you thousands more, all right? And by the way, a lot of people are getting sucked into this. They'll say, these advocates will come and say, look, don't worry about it. You've got 5 acres, you're fine. That hilltop, that view of the hill, it's going to be yours. You'll never have to worry. There won't be any building. So buy into this, right? And you do. And by the way, the Agenda 21 people want control of all the hilltops and all the dales and all the rivers and streams, by the way. That's theirs, if they had their way. So you buy into it, and let's say a few years later, you may want to, you have a couple of children, you may want to add a home. Oh no, you have a conservation easement. You can't do that. Or maybe mother-in-law needs to move in. Or maybe you just want to build a deck. You can't do it, folks, because you bought into this. So you're trapped. Or maybe there's a fire, and you can't rebuild. So you sell. You sell to a land trust for 10 cents on the dollar. Or these land trusts have found a vernal pool. What's a vernal pool? Whatever they say it is. It could be sand, and they'll call it a vernal pool. And you can't use your farm anymore, and then you sell 10 cents on the dollar, and you get off your land. Happens all the time, okay? How about idling laws? Oh, we have that in Connecticut, don't we? More than 5 minutes, you get a fine. Idling laws, all based on Agenda 21, right? Now, let me say this. There have been advocates of power before Agenda 21 was codified. Land grabs, long before that, federal land grabs. But the federal government has all the property, and it's an easy transition to international property, right? How about manufacturing? This is Brass City, right? Where's all the brass? All the buildings are gone. I remember all these when they were. I think they were in the early '90s. I remember a tool company. It was still open in New Britain. They were still making tools. They're gone, long gone, right? It's coming back? No. It's up to us, I suppose. Property tax increase, rent increase, but the bottom line is the lack of local and state and federal control, right? You elect the mayor or the town manager or the town council members, they take an oath to uphold the charter of that town, the constitution of that state, and of the U.S. Constitution, and then they buy into this. They take that, now they're taking an oath to the UN Charter, all right? Public and private schools promoting Agenda 21, they don't use the term, but when they come home and say, my daddy, you're a fascist because you're not recycling, then you know when something's happening here, right? All right, what to do about it? There's a lot we can do, and here's some success stories to encourage you. Now, this is, we've had a lot. Since last spring of 2011, numerous towns, cities, and counties have got ICLEI out. They're kicked out, right out. A smart meter decision in Maine. A couple said, we don't want smart meters. We hired a lawyer, and they won their case last summer. They had to remove the smart meter. Okay? That should set a precedent for the rest of the country. Gateway 1, back last year, Gateway 1 was defeated. This was they put 1 in there, right? It's a little hint. We know what this is. Some of our members in the Birch Society and other patriotic type groups approached the governor, and they said, Governor, this plan in central coastal Maine has nothing to do with local government. It's all coming from the UN. They weren't afraid to tell them the truth. Oh, you can't say the UN. They'll think you're a conspiracy wacko. Well, they had no choice. They had to do it. And the next day, the governor said, we're defunding this project. Okay? That doesn't mean it's out of Maine completely, but it's a good step. And if he doesn't get reelected, then then what we'll have, we still have a work cut out for us. So, Wisconsin and other states have established property rights caucuses. You would think when you swear an oath to defend the Constitution, you're automatically a property rights caucus advocate, right? Here's 2 counties in Washington, state of Washington, Whatcom and Clayman, that recently pulled out. Plantation, Florida, Carver, Massachusetts, Norman, Oklahoma, a couple of counties. I have an updated slide, but I had to get this off my internet because I had trouble with my computer. Somerset County and Ocean County, New Jersey, just about 2 weeks ago. Monmouth County, right, okay. And the last one here, I said, your town, your city, and your county. It's up to you folks to get it out of your towns and your areas. So what can you do? First, I've got to get out of this thing here. Spread the word and tell the people. Now, let me give you an example. Now, I do this full-time. Kip and I are full-time staff people, right? So all of us have limited time, but we all have time. And we have to make time for what we think is important, all right? This article came out back in February. I put this in a PDF format and uploaded it to my Scribd page. And if you don't have Scribd, I suggest I have lots of these documents that are free downloads on Scribd. I'd be happy to share it with you. And because you have it uploaded on Scribd, you can post it on Facebook. Facebook can be a very good tool if it's used properly. I have got nothing but positive results. More doors. I'm getting like 2 or 3 invitations to speak as a result of my Facebook postings and my YouTube postings. Somebody in Memphis, Tennessee, said, will you come to Memphis? What do you need? I said, airfare, hotel, and a trip to Graceland. And she said, we can manage that, okay? So, Massachusetts had 38 towns that belonged to ICLEI. So I said, where do I begin? Like a mosquito in a nudist colony, right? Well, Carver was another town my ancestors pioneered. My name has the last name has a little bit of significance as a park name after me. Not me, I'm sorry, after some ancestors of mine. So I thought maybe they see the name, they'll pay attention. So I posted it a few places, Carver Republican Party. And I just said, you folks should be involved. You should make an issue out of this. The lady who runs the party, or the club, called me. She read the article. She said she knew nothing about this. She said, but it explains everything. Well, then 2 months later, we had a meeting in Carver. Almost 100 people showed up on a hot summer night, including a couple of bad guys that made this thing happen. Within a week, ICLEI was kicked out of Carver. And because of her, this lady, she also was the founder of the Plymouth County Tea Party. I've got maybe 10 or 15 speaking engaged, well, maybe 10 in Massachusetts. Lots of goodwill, lots of credibility, and the Tea Party groups in Massachusetts are now working on this issue. How about informing your elected officials, opinion motives? I know I was talking to We Are Change folks here. They were in the City Hall all the time. They invited all of the aldermen here. Any aldermen from Waterbury? I guess they couldn't find the library. I guess it's kind of out of the way, right? How about the mayor? Is the mayor, anybody from the mayor's staff here? You see, they're not here yet, but they will be here as you become more actively involved. Okay, there was a reporter here, so I was glad to see at least one reporter here, right? So that people are going to start talking about it. That's when they show up, because in New Jersey, the mayors are showing up, and the selectmen are showing up, and town managers are showing up. We had a guy running for Congress in Massachusetts show up. We had state reps all the time that come because they want to learn about this, because they know nothing about it, or very little. So we visit our town halls, our city halls, and our state houses, or our state reps, or what have you. How about visiting the editor of the local newspaper or reporter? You know, we might send a news release or an email. Why don't we go out to meet these people, get to know them? They're always looking for stories. You know, why don't come out and get some influence them? How about hosting a meeting like this in your area, your town, or even your living room? Show a videotape in your living room. Spread the videos on cyberspace and articles on cyberspace. We all have internet. We all have email. We have Facebook page. By the way, if you want to friend me on Facebook, you know, Hal Shurtleff, Boston, Massachusetts, please do that. And I'm posting stuff all the time. I posted a video done by John Anthony, a fellow from New Jersey, who he did a great slideshow presentation. It's called Agenda 21 for Elected Officials. It's been there about a month. I've got over 4,000 views, and I put my phone number on it. See, when I go fishing, I like to put worms in the hook. And these are people calling me from Michigan. A woman in Michigan. I'm going to speak to a homeschool group of 5,000 families in March because she saw my number on this video. See, that's what activists think. You see, not just put the information out, watch it, but become an activist, right? So that's a great way. We didn't have cyberspace back in 1992. We had to make videos in cassettes and hope enough people showed up to our meetings at the Waterbury Library. Now we can do this as well. Now Facebook has a couple of really good pages. Choose Freedom, Stop Agenda 21, which is a JBS sponsored one. Stop Agenda 21, Stop the ICLEI is a great, I'm happen to be administrator on this site. A lot of up-to-date information all the time. I'm going to suggest that you join the John Birch Society if you're not a member, because the John Birch Society has been fighting this for many years with a lot of success. And I know there's some good groups here, and I say do not take any of your efforts with that group, but I think Kip can find room for you and put you to work here doing some JBS work. How about starting an ad hoc committee in your region, in your area? John Birch Society has a website, jbs.org, and if you go to jbs.org, it says issues. You can click down, it will say Stop Agenda 21. And by the way, I can send you this whole slide. I can put this, give a link that you can get all this information to if you want. And you can get, there's petitions, there's some downloads, there's some video links, and the last one is a video, a little clip I showed, but because my other computer ain't working on me, I do say this. I have 5 good reasons to promote freedom. They're called children. They're also my secret weapons because I put them to work. You know, I have my 70-year-old handing out material in Dedham, Massachusetts, exposing Agenda 21. That's what the video was about. And I say to people, my son's back there. He's my sidekick bodyguard. He's almost as tall as I am now. He'll be a bodyguard pretty soon. If we're not successful, he's going to be living in a third world country with no freedoms, okay? Or his generation will be the ones that restore us under the Constitution because we have not done a good job. My generation is more worried about the football game, believe me, right? Or worried about who's getting kicked off the island, okay? However, this last couple of years, that baton had been dropped, but it's being picked back up, you see? It's not too late. And we're handing it to this generation because, again, we're not ready for the Constitution. But we're getting ready. And that generation is going to restore us under the Constitution. That's my optimistic view. And with that, I want to thank you all.
Who funds Bickley, directly and indirectly?
Well, it comes, the membership, they get dues from the various towns and cities and counties that belong to it. And they get money, I believe, from the UN and from other NGO-type groups.
I noticed you mentioned the waterways. I couldn't help but notice that all the towns in Connecticut.
All water, yep. That's right. Ocean or lakes, yep. 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 I like to control water. When you read this book, Agenda 21, talks about the fisheries, the oceans, they're all so
Cannot wait for the
Everybody,
final proof.
I would like to offer you guys, if you want to give an oath
could
to
come
the
in the form of a
Constitution,
mushroom
I'm
cloud.
going to offer John to come up here so you guys can do that oath if that's something you would like to do.
My colleagues,
So you can uphold the
every statement I
Constitution.
make today is backed
Fight
up by
the
sources.
Section 21.
Also, you can share this entire seminar was live streamed. You can share it. It's available on the internet. You
Yeah,
go
we
to
have our own radio show.
livestream.com.
You can go on wearechange.org. You'll be able to get the radio show right there, the links and everything.
And this will be at livestream.com. Talk News.
There's a connection
And
between
it will be available. The links are all at the
You
New York
have
Change
said in the
Connecticut
past that
website.
it was, quote, pretty well
We
confirmed.
also had the Observer here today, so keep an eye out on, I think it's observer.org, if I'm not mistaken. So keep a lookout for this, should be being posted on there. And like I said, what we're going to do right now is if anybody wants to give the oath to the Constitution, we're going to have John do that oath right now.
Actually, Steve LaPlante, which is the Connecticut State Vice President for Health Care, will administer the oath for anybody that take the oath, please stand.
There are three main reasons for going to war in Iraq. Weapons of mass destruction.
Raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Howard Williams,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
and defend the Constitution
and defend the Constitution
of the United States of America
of the United States of America
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith
that I will bear true
and
faith
allegiance to the same,
and allegiance to the same,
and that I take this obligation freely
and that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
pledging my life,
pledging my life,
my fortune,
fortune,
and my sacred honor.
sacred honor.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you, everybody.